Motherhood is a vocation worthy of respect, more than not motherhood.
Ew!
Okay?
Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for coming back if you've been here before, or hi, welcome if you're new. My name's Mickey. I'm a therapist, and we talk about therapy things on this channel. Today, we are talking about Abby Roth is her last name. I called her Abby Shapiro last time. Thank you to whoever corrected me. I don't remember. I'm very sorry. But her married name is Abby Roth. However, classically, Abby is the channel name, and she is, in fact, Ben Shapiro's sister. So we are talking about Abby again today because she made an awful fucking video about motherhood. To be clear, I haven't seen this whole video, but I did see a short clip of it. Basically, she says, everyone should be a mother, which is a wild ass take. So we're going to watch that today. We're going to talk about that. For those of you who don't know, we've talked a lot about the validity of being child-free by choice on this channel. And I think it's an important thing for us to bring awareness to and to stop shaming the dickens out of people for. So we're talking about that today. Okay, let's get into this video.
In today's video, I want to talk about whether or not you should be a mother. I've seen this content going around. There's been a question of whether or not women should be mothers. Is it a good idea? Should they, take this giant step in their lives and actually approach parenthood, motherhood? And I'm gonna give a controversial answer. Not controversial for me, controversial for the world, which is yes, you should be. And there's a lot of good reasons for why. It's not just about how happy and good it'll make you feel and how it will bring you the most joy it's ever brought you. And I mean, yeah, it will bring you the highest highs you've ever had in your life. But more than that, we have a responsibility as people to live our lives for more than just ourselves.
Okay, so two things. First and foremost, we talk about this on the channel all the time, but I do just want to issue a disclaimer here. When we talk about religious fundamentalism on this channel, it's intended to be a commentary and a critique of the misinformation and disinformation that often leaches out of this legalistic, fundamentalist community. It makes no difference to me whether people are fundamentalist Christians or whether they're fundamentalists from other religions. For those of you who don't know, Abby Shapiro, I believe, is a Jewish person. And so she doesn't follow Christianity like Paul and Morgan and Girl Defined do. However, the reason that we're talking about this is because these people often hide behind this excuse of like, this is my religious identity. You can't tell me that I'm not allowed to say these things or to try to force people to believe these things. And that's fucked up, right? Classically, Abby in particular does this a lot on her channel where she espouses this like, I'm just talking about being classic. I'm just talking about my own perspective. I just really like being a pick-me, and I think I should be allowed to talk about that on the internet. And like, that's fine, right? If classically Abby wants to be a pick-me, if she wants to be a classic woman, and she wants to live by these very reductionist and sexist views, that's her business. That's none of my business or anybody else's business, frankly. But the problem is that she gets on her YouTube channel and she actively tries to shame and force other people into following the beliefs that she thinks are correct. And this is like exactly the thing that she's doing here. This is not a video about why I think I needed to be a mother or why I value being a mother or what value being a mother has brought to my life, the things like my guiding principles that brought me to motherhood. This is none of that, right? This is literally explicitly saying you should be a mother and I have decided for you based on my values that you didn't consent or agree to living your life by. Like, this is fucked up. This is so problematic. Yeah, I want to address that because I feel like this is oftentimes the excuse that people use of like, why can't you just leave people alone and just let religious people do whatever they want? And like, no, because that's not what they're doing. They're actively trying to shame and judge people into oblivion in the hopes of forcing them to follow their religious beliefs, which is not how this should work.
So the reason that I'm actually making today's video is because I saw Beauty Christy, who I really like her channel. She does a lot of stuff on there, talking about motherhood, talking about her mental health struggles, but also talking about the beauty of motherhood, how much she's changed and how much she's grown. And I watched a video on her channel about whether or not you should be a mother, and she took the question seriously, and I appreciated that. But ultimately, we come down on opposite sides of the aisle. If you think that being a mother is something that is a choice, in the sense that you could do it, you could take on this massive burden, and you could take on the massive responsibility of another person's life, or you could just continue to live for yourself and travel and party it up and do all of these things that I think are not what life is for, are not what life is truly about, then you will say that, well, maybe you shouldn't be a parent. Maybe you shouldn't be a mother. I believe, though, that motherhood is what life is for.
Wow, there's a whole lot that's being said here. Okay, before we talk more about Abby, I want to pause and say thank you to this week's sponsor, which is Beam Dream. Okay, let me take y'all with me on my new and improved nighttime routine, because y'all might not know this, but I have struggled my entire life to get good sleep. So when Beam reached out to me, I was beyond excited. Dream powder tastes like a delicious cup of hot cocoa, but it's actually formulated to help you get your best night's sleep. I tried the CBD version, which has ingredients like magnesium, reishi, L-theanine, and melatonin, and CBD, of course, which are designed to help relax your body and regulate your nervous system and improve your quality of sleep. Adding Dream to my nighttime routine has been a game changer because I'm not up tossing and turning or staring at my phone all night anymore. I'm able to fall asleep and stay asleep, and my favorite part is that I'm not groggy in the morning, or grumpy for that matter. Good sleep is essential for your mental and physical health, and I know for me, since I've started sleeping better, my mood, my energy, and even my skin are doing better. I've been making my little cup of peanut butter chocolate Dream by blending 2 scoops with some water and cuddling up on the couch about 30 minutes before bedtime, and I've been loving it. And I'm so excited to share that love with y'all because Beam hooked us up with a special discount. You can subscribe and save 20% plus get an additional 15% on top of that and a free frother with my code Atkins when you click my link or scan the QR code that's on the screen. That's up to 35% off of the original price, and you can also pause, skip, or cancel at any time, so there's no risk. So go click that link, use code Atkins, and get yourself a delicious little nighttime treat that will also help you sleep. Thank you again to Beam Dream for sponsoring this week's video. Let's go ahead and jump back in. We've talked about this before in regards to the fundamentalist take of motherhood is an intrinsic, inherent, and unavoidable part of life, because there's oftentimes this, like, saying the quiet part out loud thing of like, are you gonna take on this massive burden and give up your fun life? And like, this is very much the thing where people acknowledge that motherhood or parenting rather is difficult, right? It's not that children are a burden in and of themselves, but the workload, the mental, emotional, spiritual, intellectual effort that's required to effectively, safely, like in a well-informed way, raise a human being is quite significant. And in my opinion, it's not a thing that people should take on out of a feeling of obligation. Just because it is a lot of work doesn't mean that it isn't fulfilling. And there are lots of people who took on the journey of parenthood knowing that it can be burdensome at times, but do still enjoy it because they made that conscientious decision, guided by their own values and beliefs and a timeline that fucking makes sense for them. But this, like, labeling parenthood as this thing that's like the death of your former life is just like important to pay attention to. These are not the people that you should be taking advice about parenting or parenthood or like whether you should be a mother or not, because again, this is the same thing that Girl Defined did. Like, by their own admission, they don't fucking seem to like parenthood very much, and like, it's problematic. Erin and I were just talking about this off camera, but the thing that's so funny to me about this take especially is that there is this caricature that she does of child-free people. Conservatives do this a lot. We're like, all child-free by choice people are doing is out getting drunk and they're partying it up and they're just like having sex all the time. And like, me and my partner, literally, we sit at home, we play fucking video games. Like, sometimes I get high, I guess. But like, for the most part, I kind of just want to sit in silence. Like, that's the really high octane fucking life that my partner and I are living, which is just not having somebody tug at my shirt hem and be like, mom, 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 mom. Like, I already have 4 pets that do that, and I'm quite frankly just not interested in adding anybody else to that list. And like, this is just a caricature that I want to encourage people to unlearn. If you don't want to be a parent, there's nothing wrong with that. And it doesn't mean that you're being some like fringes of society, like extended youth person. Like, you can just enjoy your solitude. You can just enjoy having your bodily autonomy respected. There's just not a good enough reason for people to cast child-free by choice humans in this light of like, of course they're all hedonists, because that's like literally not the case.
And if you don't choose to live your life for the purpose of raising the next generation, then you're just living a hedonistic life.
I knew it!
That is only for here and now. And that's...
I am so obsessed with making bingo cards right now. And I really wish that I had made one for this video because I fucking knew it. She was gonna call child-free by choice people hedonists. And like, this, again, I already said this, but I just want to be super clear. You can be a child-free by choice people person for so many reasons, right? Like they're also too, like we should acknowledge that some people are child-free not by their choice, and those people are still living very valuable lives where they're contributing to the future of society. And like, especially when people say this, like, it's rude and it's hurtful and it's really fucking annoying to people like me who have chosen to not be parents, but this is especially a fucking gut punch to people who've struggled with infertility, to people who are unable to have children, people who for any like series of traumatic events have been unable to fulfill what is for some people sometimes a lifelong dream of becoming a parent or a biological parent, especially for people who have experienced child loss and things like that. This is so incredibly fucking hurtful. The insinuation or the outright claim that like, A, you're a hedonist if you don't have kids, but B, that your life somehow has less value or meaning. Like, ew, fucking yuck. This is another thing that's important to acknowledge about this particular niche, the like child-free niche, is that regardless of the circumstances in which you found yourself not having your own children or you know, like that you're not a primary caregiver to, there is very much realistic, attainable, plausible ways to participate, not only in like the greater good, right, in like impacting the future, but also to pour into young people and children in a variety of different ways, right? Like there's lots of different volunteer and advocacy opportunities to do this, but there's also a really important value in being a safe person for nieces and nephews and other family members, other like, you know, your best friend's kids and like that kind of a thing. That kind of involvement in a young person's life shouldn't be written off or understated as like not needed or not valuable. This is also true for people who seem to be so whipped up about like the way things were before. There's really not a lot of interest or discussion about the fact that the reason child rearing was a much more attainable and feasible goal for a lot of folks is because there used to be a much more communal approach to rearing children, right? Like the whole saying of like, it takes a village is like somewhat true in terms of what we know about successful child rearing from an anthropological point of view, right? The opportunity, the viewpoint that folks would be participating in child rearing as a community, first of all, takes the burden off of parents in a lot of ways, but also provides a child with a much more full and rich and complex understanding of life because they're being exposed and immersed to different life choices, to different opinions, to different ways of doing things, to values, beliefs, opinions. All of these things help to add up to a much more complex picture in terms of cultural diversity, in terms of awareness about the world for a child that's actually very impactful and very important for that kid's life. So first of all, if you are a person who's experienced child loss or is child-free and it wasn't your choice, please know that people like Abby Shapiro are fucking ghouls. Big love to you. Your life is no less valuable and you're no less important just because you're not fulfilling these very misogynistic values that Abby tries to espouse to people. But also, even if you are a child-free by choice person, again, please know your life has value and meaning. And again, just because you're not personally doing the like pregnancy and birthing doesn't mean that you're not participating in the future of like society and culture and like the world to come. This is just like such a sad and reductionist take.
It's sad. And I understand the concept. If you don't believe in God, if you think this is all there is, then why would you? Why would you want to have children? Why would you want to spend your days doing what can often be burdensome, what can often be mundane or boring?
Again, we are really saying the quiet part out loud here, but also on top of that, this, God damn it, I should have made a bingo card. I knew it. This is the other like top 5 most parroted judgments that these fundamentalist people espouse, which is that if you're not a religious person, surely you have no experience with morality, with values and beliefs, with a moral compass, or with a purpose beyond yourself, which is so sad. This is, again, the thing where you're like, Abby has a whole lot of words for people in a culture that she seems to know very little about. This take that non-religious people obviously don't understand the idea of a purpose or like a greater meaning than themselves is something that I thought we were done with. Like I thought this was like more so the subject of debates between atheists and religious people in like the year 2000, but I guess they're still holding on to it. For what it's worth, to be super clear, it is entirely possible to be a person who is moral, who is good, who believes in right and wrong, who has a moral compass, who doesn't immediately abandon all semblance of compassion and value of life or respect for their fellow human being and not be religious. This is just so ridiculous. For what it's worth, also, I think it's really, really funny that somebody who proudly, aggressively proclaims her membership to a very conservative political party that regularly advocates for like dismantling the EPA, for example, who has historically made a whole lot of disadvantages in terms of our ability to preserve the climate and to like address the climate crisis, for example. It's really, really funny to me, this take of like, surely you hedonists don't care about the future of our world. Like, where are the kids gonna live, Abby? Where are the kids gonna live? There's no planet for them to live on. Like, this is such an obvious like talking point. And like, again, we've talked about Abby on this channel before in regards to her being a pick-me. I'll put that video up here. But this is such an obvious like pick-me thing. The thing that's important to remember about this is that in this community, in this culture that Abby belongs to, this religious fundamentalist and also very conservative socially and politically, this community devalues and dehumanizes women, right? People like Abby Shapiro and other talking heads that just so happen to be women in this culture get a lot of attention from conservative men, but not because they value Abby as a human being, not because they care about her as a person, not because they are willing to let go of these misogynistic, patriarchal, and dehumanizing values for her specifically, but purely because they really enjoy hearing their bigotry come out of her mouth. It validates the misogyny and the patriarchy and all of the bullshit beliefs that they have about women. And so this is another thing that's important to remember, is that we may get a positive feedback from being a pick-me initially, but that won't change the fact that they don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you as a human. They don't see you as like better than all of the other women. Rest assured, they view you as just as much a subhuman second-class citizen as they do all the rest of the secular and liberal and progressive women. So again, I want to caution anybody against believing this kind of stuff, because it will not advantage you in the way that you think it will. But also, again, that this belief system that she's parroting actively disadvantages her specifically. And just because she's choosing not to address it doesn't mean it's not happening.
But if you know that there is something greater, and you have a greater purpose, not just for the afterlife, but you yourself have a deeper purpose and way to fulfillment, then motherhood is kind of necessary. Now, of course, there's the caveat. What if I can't have children? This video is not targeted at people who want to have children and can't, or who want to be married and aren't, and so can't start a family. Of course not. Of course, there is value to singlehood. There is value to those who can't have children. And I still believe that people in those positions should be taking a role and a part in the future generation, whether it be fostering or adopting, or whether it be just being involved in your community and being involved in your nieces and nephews' lives. I think that that is super important. But what I'm really talking about are the people who are kind of selfishly questioning whether or not they want to have children at all, treating it like...
This is an important distinction for us to make here, because she's about to go on this whole rant. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a second, but I just want to draw your attention to the fact that she made this distinction between folks who want to have kids but can't, and folks who can have kids but won't, basically in saying this video is not for you if you are struggling with infertility, or you've experienced child loss for some reason, you're not able to be a parent even though you want to. This video is not about you. It's fine, right? Like, of course your life still has value. However, should you choose to not have kids, then your life has less value, which is fucking insane. That's fucking nuts. First of all, because whether you are childless by choice or not by choice, that doesn't change the fact, like, whether you've landed in this position of not having a child by your own choice or not, it doesn't change the outcome and the impact of the actions of continuing to be involved and immersed and like involved in kids' lives, right? Like the child whose life that you're involved with, the volunteering, the advocacy, the fostering, the adoption, all of that is the outcome of that in theory is the same. right? Like participating in a child's life, being a safe person for a niece and nephew, a nibbling, like, you know, a family member of some kind is not somehow diminished because you've chosen to not have your own kids. Children can't tell. And even if they can, it's not like there's a fucking point system. Like this, I love The Good Place as much as the next person, I really do. But I am confident, based on what we know from statistics and research about the impact of human behavior on other people's lives, that it doesn't work like that, right? I can assure you as a clinician who's been educated about human relationships, human development, the brain, that there's not like a lesser impact if you're child-free by choice versus like not child-free by choice, right? Or like childless by not your choice. This is just like such a silly and ridiculous take. And I want to draw people's attention to it because it's again, like she's attempting to walk herself out of being labeled as a fucking asshole and being insensitive to people who've struggled with infertility and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But this is like the flimsiest way that somebody could possibly do this.
A choice to be made. Something they can just ignore. They can just put off their fertility forever and always because who cares? They might as well stay hot and fit and focus on, honestly, everything that's just not important. We live in a society that basically says, do whatever you want. Do what makes you happy. Do whatever you think makes sense for you. I'm going to do what I want to do, and you do what you want to do. And obviously, at the end of the day, I'm never going to walk up to someone who's chosen something different and tell them to their face I think they're doing something dumb, or not have a relationship with them, or not be able...
Is that not what you're doing? This is hilarious. This is my favorite piece of content that she's ever made. This is nonsensical. This is absolutely unhinged commentary. Abby, tell the truth. Are you memeing? You can't be serious. I am blown away. First of all, it's almost a little sad, honestly. The thing of like, I'm just gonna stay hot and fit. I'm just gonna stay happy and do all of this interesting stuff that's not shitty and mundane. It really comes across as somebody who hates their life or somebody who's like deeply dissatisfied with the choices that they've made. And I want to be clear, I don't know that that's how she feels necessarily, but it does come across in a way that's problematic at best. This is very worrying. It's a little bit sad. The other thing about this that's hilarious to me is her assertion that she would never go up to somebody and say to their face that like you're making the wrong choice or that this is bad, right? And like, first of all, we really need to understand that in the year 2023, the internet and social media is very much an interpersonal means of communication, right? Like there is some distance in regards to the way that we produce content, right? Like I'm not actually sitting in the room with you right now. Currently, I'm sitting in my office and it's just Aaron and me. And so you're not like technically in company with me. But when we communicate with people through digital means, it doesn't make the impact of that less, right? Like just, this is the car windows thing, right? When you're sitting in your car and you have your windows up and you have music on, it feels a lot less threatening to like, at somebody who cut you off or, you know, to like flip somebody off or whatever, right? But like if you roll your windows down and turn your music off, then all of a sudden it feels really personal, right? It feels like you're right next to this person because you are, though. Like nothing actually changed except for your perception of the subjective events or the objective events rather. And this is an important thing for us to learn about the internet. There's been lots of content creators who have talked about this phenomenon. And I do just really want to encourage people, especially those of you who grew up in a world where like the internet has always existed. We kind of do this like depersonalization thing. I know that this is a very talked out point, but just for what it's worth, the person on the other side of the screen that you're talking to is very much a real person. And just because in our mind we're able to like dissociate that and like depersonalize that doesn't mean that it's not actually happening though, especially in regards to content creators and like internet personalities, right? If you talk shit about somebody on the internet, the odds that they will hear you is like yelling in a crowded room, right? Like they might not hear you, but they very well could. They very well could. And so especially for those of you, again, who have grown up in a world where the internet has always existed, please don't put shit on the internet that you wouldn't be comfortable and feel safe to defend and to say to someone's direct face-to-face, like in-person contact, right? Like, please don't do that. This is not a good way to go about using the internet. And I'm just flabbergasted that a whole ass grown woman is like, no, why would I ever say this to someone's face? I'm gonna say it to you, but not to someone's like actual face. Like, hello? Abby, that's the same thing.
But I do think that there are choices in life that are better, and there are choices in life that are worse. We are reading the book Conservatism by Yoram Hazony for my book club on Substack. Shameless plug, check it out if you haven't already. It's where you can get my exclusive content. And in the book, Yoram Hazony talks about how we have kind of created a society that's all about how equal everyone is. And what he means by that is that every choice is equal. If you decide to go into the army and fight for your country, that is as valid as any other career you could choose. But what that means is that the jobs that we choose to do because they earn us respect, now don't earn us respect anymore because everything is equal. Nobody is better.
She really said they're taking away my privilege and I don't like it. This is the most self-important fucking bullshit that I've... Listen, people call me pompous all the time. And like, listen, I get it, you know? Like, can I be a little bit self-important sometimes? Very much yes. But this is another level. Like, I feel like that should really say something coming from me. Like, come on. Come the fuck on. She really said there is a concerted social movement to stop shaming people and to not uplift people who do things that historically very privileged white cis hetero people have done, and I don't like it. Like, hello? I just am blown away. The other thing that I wanted to address in this video, is that Abby Roth does this a lot, where she sort of bemoans this like lack of classic lifestyle. And like really what this is, especially in these very repressive, fundamentalist religious environments, really what this is a dog whistle for how frustrated that these people are that white supremacy is publicly frowned upon, that we're no longer as a society and as a culture willing to just sit idly by and allow people to be marginalized and oppressed. And like, fucking ew. Like, Abby, this is embarrassing. This is fucking embarrassing, especially because the only reason that this woman has a pulpit from which to preach is because of fucking feminism and social progressivism. This is insane. Like, if you really do believe in this classic, essentially repressive, misogynistic, patriarchal lifestyle, then shut up and get off the internet, babe. Don't you have kids to attend to? I just don't understand. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. This is again what I'm saying about the pick me thing, whatever. We talked it to death. You get it. Ew.
For having done something that is hard or important or worthy. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, there are so many things that we choose to do as people, and obviously we don't do it for everyone else. That's not the point. But there are things that we choose to do as people because they are worthy of respect. And when we take that respect away, of course, you see people just saying any choice is valid, who cares? Motherhood is a vocation worthy of respect, more than not motherhood.
Ew. Okay, but also can we talk about the fact that she tried to say earlier, this is not about you if you struggle with infertility or can't have kids, but also you're just less worthy of respect than I am. Ew. Fucking ew. This is also kind of, I guess this is an important learning moment. Oftentimes, people ask about therapists all the time, or people ask therapists all the time, rather, can you, like, are you reading people all the time? Can you, like, read people's minds? And, like, no, that's not how it works. I wish I was that good of a clinician, but I can assure you that I'm not. However, there are sometimes tells that people have, and especially when you, like, read people for a living, you do kind of become attuned to, like, when somebody's insecurity is leaching out of their mouth, for example, and this very much feels like that. Abby talks in her About section on her website that after she graduated with her 3rd degree in operatic performance, that she found herself as distant from her classical lifestyle as she ever had, and she felt very alienated and blah, blah, blah. And that was supposedly the birth of her channel and her content, right? This comes across very much, especially analyzing the material in front of us as a person who could feel sort of ineffectual, a person who feels kind of, like they're shouting into the void. Nobody cares about her opinion, especially knowing that she belongs to this very repressive religious environment that dehumanizes and devalues women. This makes a lot of sense, that this person would feel the need to say, I'm worthy of respect. Care about me. What about me? Somebody look at me. It's also not a surprise to me that she seems to be doing this kind of like internet tantrum thing of like, I'm worthy more respect than you are. Don't you respect me more? Somebody should respect me more. Knowing that her brother is like a famous person, essentially. Don't get me wrong. I don't think anybody's like really that excited about Ben Shapiro, but he does enjoy more of like the limelight than she does. And it does just really come across as this sort of insecure, ineffectual, unseen sort of person who's desperately grasping at some sense of validity, some sense of relevancy. This person who feels irrelevant and small and like needs to sort of shit on other people in order to feel valid and relevant in their own selves. This is also too very much a thing that people do just day to day interpersonally, right? It's an important thing to be aware of, and it can also help to take the sting out of commentary like this when people say things to you like this, even again, just in your own interpersonal relationships. Oftentimes if somebody is protesting too much, it's the call's coming from inside the house. And so you don't need to pay any attention to the criticism, to the shaming, to the outright insults that this person is trying to hurl at you, because oftentimes it's a projection and reflective of their own work that they've yet to do on themselves, more so than it is about you specifically.
Unpopular opinion, I know, but I'm going to say it anyway, because the truth is that life should not just be lived for the here and now, for you, for your parties, for your travel, for whatever. For many reasons. One is it is important for us as citizens of the world to shepherd the next generation, to shepherd our society towards the future. It's important. It's not all about you. The second thing is that it makes people better to have children. And if it doesn't, you need to reevaluate yourself and reevaluate your life.
With what credentials is she saying this also? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not here to be a nitpicky asshole, but 3 college degrees in operatic performance do not a psychology degree make, babe. You're not at all credentialed or qualified to be making statements about what work people need to do on themselves, especially when you're out here leeching your own insecurity onto the internet like a sieve. This is embarrassing.
Having a child reminds you what you are for, which is so much more than the silly nonsense that people can hedonistically just engage in. If you are more worried about how your body is going to look after you have a child than having a healthy child, for example, you have your priorities wrong. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't try to be fit after you have a child, be healthy for your family, stay attractive for your husband. Of course, those are important things, but if your priority is staying hot more than having a child, clearly things are off there.
First of all, is Abby saying then that she thinks she's not hot anymore because she's had kids or had a kid and is pregnant? Like, interesting take. But second of all, this opinion that like your priorities must be wrong and there's something wrong with you. This is again the thing where like these are my beliefs and so therefore they must also be everyone else's. And if you're wrong, clearly you're just in delusion. Clearly you just have some work to do on yourself. When the truth is that if Abby wants to live her life in this way and these are the values that call to her, that's nobody's business but her own, right? If her and her husband and her family feel very situated in this value and this is the thing that gives them purpose, that allows them to feel fulfilled in life, do that. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. And that's literally the whole point of like autonomy and individuality and people being allowed to make their own life choices, structure their, families and whatever in a way that is fulfilling to them. But the thing that's important to note about this is that in the same way that these people will bemoan how unfair that conservatives are being canceled and nobody likes us anymore, are also the people who, in the same breath, they will complain about how we're being canceled and nobody wants to, live life the way that we do. And people are trying to tell us we can't do this. These are also the same people who are trying to say, I can do whatever I want and my religion allows me to do whatever I want, but you can't do that though. You can't do that. Freedom for me, but not for you though. Like, I want to be able to live my life and structure my family in the way that I want to, but you shouldn't. I don't like that. And so this is, again, the thing that I want to draw people's attention to. This is a farce. This is a fallacy. This is not true. This is not actually about individuality or personal autonomy, because if it was, it would be no skin off her back for people to live their lives in a way that don't uphold her values or beliefs, right? It wouldn't bother her at all to see people making choices that she views as wrong or immoral, because she would know for herself in her own heart and mind and body that this is what's fulfilling to me. This is the capital T truth. And you know, it's sad that that person is making choices that aren't that, but I'll pray for them behind closed doors and, you know, just wish them the best. But that's not what she's doing, is it? That's not. She's actively trying to shame people for doing the things that she's not doing, which is a fucking problem. The real, like the actual truth of allowing people to make their own autonomous choices and to live from a sense of individualism is actually honoring that, like, while you may do things that I don't agree with, that's none of my business. It affects me 0%, and it doesn't hurt me for you to live your life in a way that's fulfilling to you, so long as I'm allowed to live my life in a way that's fulfilling to me. But this is not that, and this is why this drives me fucking bananas.
Like, a woman in her 50s who's never had a child is obviously going to look a lot different than a woman in her 50s who's had 3 or 4 children. But whose body was used for what it was supposed to be used for? I'm sorry, it's true.
We're really talking a lot about aesthetics and appearance, and I feel like Abby might have some stuff to work on.
The only way to understand, like, the depth of life and maturity is to spend time around children. And theoretically, the best way to do that is to do it by having your own.
Says who? Can I get a source? Can I get a fact? Can I get a singular hyperlink? No. These are just the shower thoughts of an overprivileged generational wealth white woman. Who cares, Abby? Like, nobody asked. Nobody fucking asked.
I think that people who don't have children can't understand. They don't understand the world in its most meaningful sense. You just can't. You can't describe how love feels until you are carrying your own child.
This is my favorite thing that like pro-natalists say, which is that like you won't know real love until you have your own kids. And this is such a silly and hilarious thing to say, because there are lots of types of love that some people will never experience, right? Like, I grew up with a brother. I'll never know the special bond that sisters have amongst themselves, right? I never had a sister. I never will have a sister. I have best friends that come close, right? But I didn't grow up with another sister in my house, and so I'll never know what that love feels like. But that doesn't make me less of a person, though, right? Like, there are people who grew up without a particular type of parent, or without aunts or uncles or grandparents, without brothers or without siblings at all. We, as a society, are very happy to honor that those people are not less of a person, that they're not missing something, that they can still grasp the sense of love. They can still successfully form happy, healthy relationships, especially romantically, right? They are still allowed to say, I'm in love with this person, and nobody goes, but are you really? You didn't have a fucking sister though, so are you sure you know what real love looks like? Are you sure you know? Like, nobody says that. And so this assertion that if you don't have your own biological children and shoot them out of your body, that therefore you have no grasp on life's purpose, on what real love is, on what actual humanity is so funny. Like, it's absurd. It's absurd when people say this.
You can't describe how important another person's life is more than your own until you have children to look after.
The other thing that cracks me up about this is that she wouldn't know. How would you know? The only experience that she has is being a mother. You have nothing to compare this to. You have no control data. This is literally the point of statistics and of actual studies, because it allows us to analyze two experiences side by side, ideally in a randomized control fashion with a double-blind assurance for, like accounting for margins of error and all of this stuff. And she has none of that. Again, this is literally just the shower thoughts and the musings of a very overprivileged, self-important, generational wealth white woman.
Whether it be your own or someone else's. But these are life lessons that you can't learn if you call motherhood a choice. And this is why I'm saying I don't like the idea that motherhood is a choice, in the sense that motherhood is part of life. It's not something you could choose to do or not to do. It is a part and parcel of being a person, of being a woman. That is what I mean when I say motherhood isn't a choice.
So you're not a person if you don't have kids then? Is that the take? Like, hello?
Now, motherhood is not all easy. And that's the thing I think that gets people, is that if you say like, oh, should I be a mother? Oh yeah, because it's so wonderful and it's so amazing. I mean, it is wonderful and it is amazing, but it's not all wonderful and amazing. And obviously it's easier when you don't have children. You can do everything on your own schedule and you can do it just because you want to. Yeah. And that's not what it's like when you have kids. So it's
fine.
Not, motherhood and parenting is not about the fun and the joy, although it is incredibly joyful. But my issue lately with the internet and the way that we talk about motherhood is that we have to only talk about the negatives. It makes me crazy because I'll say, as a stay-at-home mom who's home with my son and who gets to spend all day with him, like, there is nothing I'd rather be doing and there is nothing better. It really is super fun and it is great.
Great, that's fine.
And there's nothing that would fulfill me or bring me more meaning. I think what we get...
We're doing so much protesting, Abby. First of all, I want to be super clear. There is a lot of value in being a parent generally, right? I think we should stop talking about it in the lens of like physically carrying and birthing a child is like the only real vehicle of motherhood, because that's super fucked up. But also on top of this is such a funny thing to me. People say this a lot about like, nobody cares about moms the way they used to. And like, listen, as a clinician who helps people work through trauma with their primary caregivers all the fucking time, I can assure you that our society at large is so much more obsessed with moms and dads than any of you fucking think that it is. If you have ever had to walk through the trauma of having a difficult, contentious, or non-existent relationship with a mother because they've traumatized you for any, other reasons, you'll be well aware of how fixated our culture is on trying to shoehorn the relationship between moms and kids, trying to force kids to be thankful and to be in contact and to be, like fawning all over their moms. It's exhausting. And this is the source of a lot of trauma for folks, because the truth is that not all moms are good moms. And sometimes the healthiest choice that we can make for ourselves is to go no contact, or to distance ourselves, or to set really firm boundaries with those people. And it is a really painful thing to live in a society that is so preoccupied with, well, but that's your mom. Well, but they'll always be your mom, but that's your flesh and blood, but they gave up their life for you. All of this is such a hurtful and shitty thing to say, but that messaging is everywhere. Like, I want to be super clear, especially, this is the same thing that they do about how sad and disappointing it is that Christianity is disappearing from the world. And like, literally it's not. Like, all of our federal holidays are founded around Christian holidays. Like, this is not a thing that's disappearing. Christianity and motherhood are not being wiped off the face of culture. Like, that's literally just not true. Just because people want to set better boundaries with their parents, and because people are not willing to say, my only personality trait is being a mom anymore, doesn't take anything away from people like Abby who do want to be a stay-at-home mom, who do enjoy being a mom, right? Like, again, there's lots of value in being a parent. There's nothing wrong with saying like being a parent is part of my identity. It's a great part of my calling. It is very fulfilling. It is an important thing, obviously. We've talked about this on the channel before. Being a parent is a sacred calling, and it's something that we should undertake with an attitude of appreciation for how important and impactful this is. And also for people who don't feel a calling to that, who are not equipped for that, who quite simply don't want to do that, there's not a world that we should force those people into being parents, because if they don't want to, they're not equipped, and they don't have the skill set to do that, they're going to fumble the bag at parenthood, which is traumatizing. Like, this is not the pro-life sentiment that you think it is.
Get into is the idea of self-pity. We pity ourselves for how difficult day-to-day life can be as a parent and as, the normal drudgery of life. And that is a terrible way to approach parenthood and a terrible way to approach motherhood. If you constantly are pitying yourself, rather than saying, you know what, everyone is going through the same thing I am. I had a hard day. Guess what? Tina down the block, she also had a hard day. Once you recognize that it's natural for life to be difficult sometimes, then you don't go into the self-pity place. You can just be like, okay, today was a little trickier than another day. And then the next day might be a lot more fun and easy.
This is the girl-defined and Paul Morgan take of, sometimes you have emotions. Have you thought about just not? Maybe you just don't. Just don't feel them. Just don't have emotions. This is not helpful. These are the last people that you should be taking mental health advice from.
I think that when we constantly talk about motherhood like it is this absolutely awful burden, and we talk about how it's just exhausting.
You just did.
Hard and like, God, it is so draining Because, of course, if you focus on the negative, in a way, I was focusing on the negative to prove that being a stay-at-home mom was real work, counted as hard work, so that people could take my job seriously. If I was exhausted and tired and, oh my goodness, my day was so difficult, then people would treat being a stay-at-home mom as a real job.
People who, Abby? People who? Which gender of people are devaluing your work, babe? Can guarantee you it's not other fucking stay-at-home moms. It's probably not other women, is it? This is the problem. This is the thing. She's literally acknowledging that she was overplaying the difficult parts of motherhood to try to gain validation and approval from the men in her life who dehumanize her and devalue the work and the effort that she's putting in to being a parent and to keeping their family together. The answer is not to be more of a pick-me, Abby. You're like so close.
And if I was joyful and happy and I had a great day and I got to spend time with my kiddo and it was just wonderful, then maybe people would think I was mooching off my husband or would think that my job wasn't hard. Okay, so number one, who cares what other people think?
Apparently you.
I know that there are days that are hard. And I know that there are elements of motherhood that are hard. And I know that when I keep a positive perspective on it, it's a much easier job. Like, practically, I feel like I'm having a much easier day when I view motherhood through the lens of happiness and joy.
Listen, there is somewhat of a real benefit to being mindful of the way that our brain automatically thinks about certain stuff. There's a whole tenet of CBT that's like, whatever. I'm not a big fan of fucking CBT, but like, you get it. Maybe we'll make a video about CBT specifically one day if you guys want me to talk about that. And so this can be somewhat of a meaningful intervention in terms of adjusting our perspective about life and to help be aware of where our brain naturally leads itself to. However, there is a limit to which this becomes helpful. There's a threshold, rather, that we cross where this is no longer helpful and is now starting to be hurtful to your mental health, right? Just grinning and bearing your way through trauma and difficulty. It's not a real fucking intervention. This is not helpful to anybody. Just telling people to just smile their way through trauma and difficulty and emotional upset and emotional dysregulation is not helpful. This is literally the thing that therapists have been screaming from the rooftops for like generations. Like, please just feel your feelings. Please just feel how you feel. You're allowed. But people like Abby and this other like conservative fundamentalist niche tell people that their emotions are sinful, that your emotions are bad, that if you feel bad for too long, then you're being ungrateful. And like, this is the opposite of what we know about actually helpful advice for dealing with emotional dysregulation.
I am happy and I am joyful and I am so grateful for this life that I get to live, that I get to spend my mornings taking my son to an indoor play gym to play with his friends while I get to talk with the moms there and maybe chase him around and try to get him to eat. Like, yes, there's the difficult plus the beauty and the joy. So I think that it's so important for us to recognize that, like, yes, motherhood is hard. Yes, there are difficult elements, but overall it's a huge blessing. At the end of the day, I'm making this video because I want to be the one to say that motherhood is important. And it's not just a choice. And it's not just something you could choose to do as easily as you could choose to be some other career. Motherhood is a part of life, and it's an important part of life because it's an important part of growing up and being a mature person. And if you have the opportunity to be a mother and you have the opportunity to be fertile, that is the path you should be going down. There's no other way for you to become the fullest version of you if you choose to ignore it.
I can happily debunk that as being fucking false as a person who is actually qualified to speak about people's self-actualization, their journey to their fullest selves. This is actual work that clinicians are doing, and I can guarantee you the thing that we're prescribing, religious or not, because again, this is a reminder that there are very much clinicians who are religious and Christian and Jewish and people who abide by these religious beliefs. This is not the advice that we're giving people. It's just like, be a mom. That's not fucking helpful. The other thing, there's like 1 minute of the video left, and I think it's mostly her talking about her Substack and whatever. So the other thing that I just want to close the video with is to be super clear. that I understand what she's saying in regards to the fact that motherhood is sort of an inevitable part of the human life cycle, and of like society generally, in the sense that like people, right, the human race no longer perpetuates if no one is willing to be a mother, right? If no one is procreating or giving birth to someone, then we stop, right? People die and then that's it. Fair enough. Like, being a parent, again, is an important thing, but the goal, especially from like a healthy place, from like a self-actualized and self-aware place, is not to force people into parenthood regardless of whether they want it or not, but to uplift and to create a social change that empowers people to choose their actual best choice for them, again, based on their own circumstances, their own boundaries, their own accessibilities, their own whatever, that allows that choice to be a thing that doesn't disadvantage people to a really high degree, right? It's not a coincidence, in my opinion, that we're seeing a decline in the age of decline in childbirth generally, but especially in how old somebody is at the time that they have their first child. A lot of this is mirroring what we're seeing in terms of costs of living, in terms of our ability to form generational wealth, to buy property, to have health insurance, to be able to afford surprise expenses. Like, all of this is important. It's not just analyzing when or what social phenomenon is happening, but when it's happening. We really need to be aware of this. And if Abby and again, this like very fundamentalist conservative niche is really that whipped up about why people aren't having kids anymore, they do a lot better to evaluate the social circumstances and what is happening to regular ass everyday people who don't have generational wealth to uplift their lifestyle, and why those people are making the choices that they're making. Because the truth is that it would be a whole lot easier for people to choose to be parents and to embark upon the journey of parenthood, for those who really want to, for those who feel called to it, if they had access to health insurance, if they had access to food, if they had access to buying property, if we had the opportunity to work less so that we can develop meaningful community relationships and then pour our life into children in a community context rather than having to choose between affording childcare or going to work. These are real choices that people have to fucking make. And whatever. The thing that especially gets me about this fucking issue is that this person who has no concept of what it looks like for regular ass people to have to figure out financially how to afford children, especially when they're a surprise or they were unexpected, is out here issuing prescriptive demands about what people do or don't do with their genitalia, which is, first of all, a wild ass fucking take, but second of all, the absolute last fucking person on planet Earth that anybody should be taking advice from about whether you should be a parent or not is somebody who has no earthly fucking concept of what it looks like to have to make choices where you're actively having to pick what part of your life is going to go unaddressed today because of the situation that a lot of us have been forced into by our capitalist hell state. So listen, this was probably a long video. Shout out if you made it this far. I think it goes without saying that this is shitty fucking advice. I do also just want to give the disclaimer here that I give at the end of all of these videos. Please don't go hate watch her content. Don't go leave her shitty comments. Don't go dislike her video. All that does is give her a further leg to stand on in terms of continuing to make more content and also getting sponsorships to get paid to espouse the hatred or the hateful bullshit that comes out of her mouth. So please don't do that. If you want to support this channel or the work that we're doing, you can subscribe, you can like the video. There are lots of other meaningful ways that we can create a positive change that don't include leaving hate comments on her videos. So, but that's it. Thanks for coming. If you like the video, like the video. I do want to give another thank you to our sponsor this week, which was Beam Dream. Go click the link in the description if you want to get your hands on some of that, and share the video to help the channel grow and to help each other grow. And I will see you guys next Saturday. Okay, bye.